So welcome, everyone. My name is Amanda Miller. I'm with Leadership Northern Colorado. I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here today. We have just a few opening announcements, and then I will turn it over to our guest and our interviewer, and we'll dive right into our leadership moment conversation. I want to again just thank everyone for being here, for participating in Leadership Northern Colorado. I want to recognize our Alumni Steering Committee for all the work that they do in pulling together this program and the sessions throughout the year. Those of you on our committee, if you want to take a moment, wave and say hello. Thank you all for all your work. We still have a few more joining us, so I'm keeping my eye on the waiting room as we see others connecting. Do you want to recognize our sponsors? So I will screen share quickly as we say hello and thank Canvas Credit Union for sponsoring Leadership Northern Colorado and the Leadership Moment series. So we're excited today to have Zach Mercurio here. We will start our interview here in just 1 minute. We've got more in the waiting room coming in. Doing the Zoom juggle here for a minute as we get everyone settled. So again, we want to thank Canvas Credit Union for sponsoring. We do ask that all of you stay on mute today, and that helps with any feedback or background noise that may be happening on your end. If you have questions during our interview today, please put those into the chat. We will save a few minutes here at the end of the session for answering questions. We do want to end promptly at 4 to be respectful of your time. So we will move into the interview. I'm going to introduce Jared, and Jared will be our interviewer, and Jared is a member of our steering committee. And then also want to introduce Zach. So Jared, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for running our interview, and Jared will interview Zach and get started with our questions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amanda. We appreciate it. We've got Zach here today, and he made a big impression for a lot of us in the Leadership Northern Colorado kind of realm when he came to do a keynote speech at our graduation. I think it was in 2019. And immediately after that, I started following him on Instagram, and he was vaulted to one of my favorite follow. And every post was just a nugget of positivity, a spark of inspiration, or something thought-provoking that helped with leadership and being purposeful. So I really appreciate that follow. And beyond that, he's a Ph.D. He's an author. His book is called The Invisible Leader. You should check it out. It is great. He's a speaker, a coach, a consultant, a researcher, a family man, and he's one of the region's best thinkers on leadership. So he's also one of the good ones. He's a hidden gem from Northern Colorado. He's less and less hidden now as he is a national speaker and consulting with plenty of different large companies, schools, and organizations out there. So we're really glad to see all the achievements that he's had in the past few years since he's been on our radar. And now we're going to put him on your radar. So welcome, Zach. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Jared. I'm excited to be here. It's always interesting when you meet someone who follows you on Instagram.
Yeah. They say don't meet your heroes because they might let you down, but you never have let me down. So I appreciate everything that you posted. So it's helped me become at least thinking about leadership in a different way. And, reading your book certainly did that too. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. No, it's great to meet you.
So your Red Sox advanced?
They did to the ALCS. Sorry, I know there's probably Yankees fans here.
Well, you've got a Rockies fan here, and we're used to mediocrity. So,
hey, I'm a Rockies fan. They're my NL team.
All right.
So
we're going to jump into the questions. And like Amanda said, if anybody has in the peanut gallery has questions, throw them into the chat, and we will catch those on the backside. So first question, what characteristics or skills should all leaders possess?
Hmm. I'm going to start with skills because I think leadership is learned. And I think the most important skills is based really on the fundamentals of being human, which is to create mattering for people. The skill to make sure that all human beings are noticed, that they're affirmed, and that they're shown that they're needed. When a lot of people think about leadership, we get a lot of thought into what leaders should do, but leaders are in the craft of being. When I was growing up in Rhode Island, so Red Sox fan. I'm actually not a Patriots fan because they were terrible when I was growing up. But my dad was a Patriots fan. I became a Dolphins fan just to spite him, by the way. I know it's a lot of bad blood. We obviously diverged and went on two very different paths. But he would take me to Patriots training camps, and I would be so excited to see the quarterbacks. But if you've ever been to like a training camp for the NFL, what you notice is that the star players are always the most boring to watch. They just sit there and practice the footwork or fundamentals in a corner somewhere. And so what's the craft of a leader, right? A craft of a leader to me is human beings. And so great leaders practice the fundamentals of being human every single day. And I think that the number one responsibility of a leader, any leader, is to be responsible for where a group of human beings with lives as vivid and complex and as important as your own leave their friends and families to spend a third of their lives that they're not sleeping for. I get asked to come to MBA schools all the time to give guest lectures, and that's how I start, right? So are you creating environments where people feel noticed, seen as who they are? Are you creating environments where people feel affirmed? They know how their uniqueness makes a unique difference. And do all people feel indispensable in your presence? And I think that's a skill that you can learn.
And it's kind of interesting. You say that it's a skill that you can learn, and the ability to get from not being a great leader, adding that skill in over time. Is there a mistake that you see that leaders make often as they're progressing through their leadership?
Yeah, and that's the mistake of thinking that common sense is common practice. So like it's common sense that we should treat everybody with respect, but is it on your to-do list today? So if you look at what you want people to feel around you, and then you look at your to-do list, there's usually a gap. And so being able to turn these ideas of how we want people to feel into strategic practices that are as robust as your financial strategy, that is the biggest mistake. And when something becomes common sense, like for example, mattering, right? We know that upwards of 60% of people in US organizations indicate they feel invisible at work. Upwards of 43% of people in worldwide samples feel undervalued at work. You look at high school aged kids or kids aged 6th grade through 12th grade. There was just a study that came out. 66,000 of them were asked if you think your teacher would notice you if you were gone. Over half the sample said no, right? A lot of these basic human ideas are mistaken and overlooked and strategically overlooked because we assume they're common practice.
And so a lot of your work is centered around, instead of improving the bottom line, it's more improving the personal side of the either the leader that you are or the folks that you lead. And when this is not one of our standard questions, but are the organizations and groups that you normally speak to, do you find that they have a good balance between their bottom line and their leadership development or personal development, or is it varied across different industries?
Yeah, I mean, name one financial metric that's not mediated through a human being.
Good point.
right? So, so human beings, think about the quality of the mediator, right? When a human being feels energized, when they feel fulfilled, when they feel like what they're doing is meaningful, inevitably anything that flows through them is going to be better as a result. I mean, research is very clear from neuroscience and psychology that human beings are suboptimal when they don't experience meaningfulness, when they can't see how they contribute. It's very easy for nothing to matter to a human being who doesn't feel like they matter, right? And so when people ask me, what's the business case for this? There's a small part of my brain, and I'm going to be honest with you all because it's local group, good group. There's a small part of my brain that's like, if you need a business case to treat people well, you probably shouldn't be in a leadership position.
Exactly.
Right. So in the moment you see a human being as a means to an end, they cease to become a human to you.
Mhm.
So a lot of the best organizations that I get to work with, they see human beings as worthy ends in themselves. Because inevitably, if you employ people, for example, the biggest societal impact you could make is to make sure the place where they're leaving their friends and families is dignifying. It's meaningful. People experience mattering, right? So that's a lot of people talk about purpose and societal causes and sustainability, which is all great, but don't overlook the fact that every organization has a responsibility to their society to make sure the place where people are making meaning in their lives for 1/3 of their lives is dignifying and meaningful, because those people go home, they have friends, they have families, they vote, they're in our community. So yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah, and it's those intangible elements of the personal side that influence the tangible side, the business case, as you said, that it makes everything.
Absolutely. Like as a byproduct, you
Mhm.
get more performance, you get more profit. Research is very clear that when humans thrive, organizations thrive, because organizations are individual human beings who organize for something. So if an individual is thriving, the collective thrives together. Now, there are some trade-offs, I will say. It costs more money at times to invest in people. But the organizations that I've worked with that have that long-term approach, that are looking for long-term viability and long-term sustainability over time, they have the commonality that they have is they put people first as the mediator for every other outcome. It's like my kid, right? He's in first grade. He's learning the difference between cause and effect.
Yeah.
You can't pursue an effect to get an effect, right? You can't be like, hey, let's get the numbers up. So we're going to try to get the numbers up, right? Every effect has a cause.
Mhm.
That cause is the contribution. So like when a VP of sales comes to me and says, Zach, I love your philosophies, but how do I get the numbers up when they're down? I say, what do you typically do? And she said to me, well, I tell people to get the numbers up. How do you think that meeting goes? Not good. But what if you started saying, how can we contribute more to get the numbers up to our customers? Right? That does two things. You contribute better. Your people want to stay. They feel like their work is meaningful, and you're still accomplishing that effect. But I would love to see more cause-driven professionals rather than results-driven professionals.
Exactly. The process delivers the outcome.
Right.
And
And we're bad at that though as humans. Like we
yeah,
like things fast, right? I mean,
it's the same with workouts. You
yeah.
you want to get through your workout and get it done rather than enjoy the workout, or anything where it's an improvement. It is a process with a desired result, and
Yeah.
without that process in a thoughtful and strategic way, you're not going to get that.
And that's why this is hard in publicly traded companies, because the shareholders want it fast.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in a system that relies on people to be morally good, in a system that incentivizes them not to be.
And so, do you find that um, in your talks and your consultant with these different companies, do you find that this is a difficult pivot to take? I know every company wants to say that they're people first, but I think we know that it's either bottom line or whatever the shareholders need.
Yeah.
Are most companies open to this kind of change or at least shift in perspective?
I would say that when people are able to feel it for themselves, it's really powerful. Like when I ask a group, if I'm in a boardroom and I ask the whole group, what do you think about a young person in your life you care about? What do you want them to feel every day at work when they grow up and work? And they go around and what do they say, right? What do you think they say? They have purpose, have relationships, treated well. And
Love
then
what-
I go, let's look at where you're investing.
Okay.
Yeah. And so what happens is that when you make it real for people, like, yeah, like this is a universal truth that we should be treating people well. You start stripping away all of the stuff that's been layered on people that, this is my worth and my company's worth is dependent upon our quarterly earnings report, which is, I have a lot of empathy for leaders because if I woke up every day and I knew that my worth was dependent on something I acquired or achieved, like that would be, what we reward is what we become.
Hmm.
So it's not surprising that there's a lot of people skeptical of this, but I think it's just peeling away, getting back to our basic humanity with people and making it human and individualized can really help push this over the edge for companies who are skeptical.
Well, that's great. So next question, what are the most important decisions that you make as a leader or one could make as a leader?
Oh man, I think time and attention is the currency of leadership, right? So
And it's in short supply.
yeah, time and attention. Um, I have had people that's like, well, Zach, I don't have time to get to know all my people. What you're saying is that you don't value getting to know all your people. What we don't have time for, we don't value. That's it, right? So in my work, it's like, where do I spend my time? And how is my time dictating what I value? The other decision that I have to make all the time is like, am I making the decision that will make the most impact? Or am I making a decision that will make me look good?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is psychologists have a difference between self-image goals and contribution goals. And Jennifer Crocker, she's a psychologist. She did this longitudinal study of people with more self-image goals than contribution goals. So a self-image goal, it's not bad. It sounds bad, but it's like achievement goals. Get this job, get this amount of money, all of that. They're fine. They're important. Achievement is important. But what she found is that people who had more of those than they did contribution goals, which was like to solve problems for people, use your strengths to make an impact on others. People who had more self-image goals ended up feeling more anxious, depressed, stressed, right? Versus those who had more contribution goals. And why is that, right? Well, when our identity as an individual or a company becomes hinged on what we do or what we get for what we do, as you know, we get older. So our ability to do the things that give us an identity will inevitably go away, or a pandemic happens. And then what? Who are we?
Well,
Yeah.
when you think about something being tied, your identity being tied to an expectation that you may not hit, there's a lot of opportunity for anxiety or just But
Yeah.
when it's tied to a contribution, no matter what progress you make towards a contribution, it's going to be positive.
Yeah. The problem with being motivated solely by results is that you can either achieve them or you don't. And then what?
Yeah.
You're in this endless cycle.
Black or white.
Psychologists call that the arrival fallacy or destination addiction.
Mhm.
If we just get to the weekend, then I'll be rested. If we just get our numbers up, then we'll be successful. If I just get this new job, then, right? And you go on this if-then roller coaster. And it's a very inefficient way to motivate human beings because you're always constantly pushing people or pushing yourself with a result instead of pulling yourself forward with a purpose.
And the next roller coaster is just around the corner if it's an
Yeah.
if-then thing.
Yeah.
Well, what is the biggest challenge that you faced as a leader? So you get to lead leaders and influence, people making big decisions. So what challenges do you face in what you do every day, and what challenges do leaders face that you see in your day to day?
A lot of my work is, so one of the things that I really make sure to try to do is to get down and talk with people on the front line. and I mean the quote unquote essential workers, right? That I think we're all essential, but
Yeah.
that's what the government says. There's essential workers. Now, my research background is I researched a group of cleaners and janitors and how they experience meaningful work in a stigmatized occupation in which dignity is not given to them by large society. And I do research on low socioeconomic status workers who comprise upwards of 60% of the US workforce. And what I see happening is most organizations think about their mission, their values, and all of that in the context of white collar employees. And so one of the things that I really make sure to do is to go down to the front line and ask, really, how are you treated here? When you go home and you sit around the dinner table with a family or friend and you talk about work, how someone treated you, what are you telling them? And that's where I get what the biggest challenge that I have as a leader is when I hear people talk about in an organization that has a purpose, values, vision, has a culture blueprint, spends hundreds of thousands of dollars on consultants to come in and they have a flashy social impact branding statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone's given 5 minutes for a bathroom break once in the morning and once in the afternoon on the front line, right? That's the stuff where I'm like, okay. Or a company recently happened that they hid from me the hourly wage they were paying people. They were paying people $13.57 an hour in a large manufacturing facility in a multi-billion-dollar company. So, and that same company told me that I needed to stop using the word indispensable when I talked about their employees because of HR legal issues. So the biggest challenge that I have is being able to say, unless you raise your wage to $18 an hour, and unless you treat your employees like they're indispensable, then I'm walking away from this big contract.
Mm-hmm. And no one wants to hear that they're not valuing their employees, because probably to
Right.
them they feel like they're doing everything possible.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's a hard balance. But if you really look at, especially if you're a bigger company, so this is a different scenario, but if you really look at like the margins and things, I mean, there's a lot of money to pay people living wage.
Exactly. And if it's not a financial I guess presentation of value, there are other things that you can do.
So there's a central tenet to my work is that one of the biggest challenges that I have is that I believe that people must have access to decent work before they experience meaningful work. Meaning that decent work is you pay people well, you dignify people well, you're including people are experiencing safety emotionally and physically, and they have access to that. And once people have that bedrock, then they can experience meaningfulness in work, and you can start really creating cultures that matter. But if you try to make someone find their purpose but they can't pay their rent, there's always going to be a major tension there. So this has to be like, it has to be all of it. We have to treat human beings well at all stages of the game.
Do you find that the influencing the meaningfulness of your organization, does that start at the bottom, does that start at the top, or kind of work its way from each end?
You know what, like I think some of the most powerful people in our world, and I'm not just overinflating that, I believe are team supervisors.
Okay.
In many aspects, the team supervisor is one of the only places in a lot of human beings' lives where they feel valued. And you have the opportunity from an interpersonal perspective to craft, no matter what your higher ups are doing, to craft mattering into that team through your interpersonal interactions. Like, and if you think you're good at this, like I did once, do you know your FedEx driver's last name? Right. Do you know, right? So like being able to notice people, like know their last names, know personal details about them, know if they're struggling, offering an action to help. Those are the little things that, independent of whatever your leader's doing, you can do for other people. I mean, you can give people dignity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes like team supervisors or middle managers, they get so caught up in what's not happening above that they forget how much influence they have over the true things that create culture.
And the kind of personal touch that they're able to start, because they're the first line of defense up the ladder
Absolutely.
for their folks. So
Yeah,
all
I
right.
can't tell you in my work with frontline workers how instrumental team supervisors are in people's lives, bad and good.
Well, we've got one more question and then we'll check on the chats. But what is your favorite book? And you can say your own if you want to, but you can also pick another one.
No,
What is
my
your
own
favorite?
is not my favorite. If you've ever written anything, if anybody's a writer out there, when you read your own stuff, it's like it's not pretty.
It's like seeing yourself or hearing yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's your favorite book, or who's your favorite leader, or maybe it's a book by your favorite leader? Could you shed some light on that? And what did you learn from it?
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a concentration camp prisoner who was also a psychiatrist, and he talked about the human will to meaning, that the greatest human freedom is the space between what's happening to us and our response to what's happening to us, and that all human beings need that will to meaning, that human beings or any organism that doesn't contribute to its ecosystem perishes, right? I mean, so having that bigger purpose, knowing your contribution and being very clear on what that is really powerful. He also has another book that just got translated by Daniel Goleman called Yes to Life. And one of the things he says, it's a previously unpublished group of lectures. One of the things I love that he says is that he says, how well are you filling the circle that you're in? So that meaning isn't out there waiting to be found in a new job. It's usually right where you are, waiting to be acknowledged. So how are you impacting the next person you're going to talk to today? And that's that idea, that will to meaning. And the one thing that is constant, no matter how your day's going, is the ability to contribute. You may not be able to achieve what you want to achieve today, but you can contribute to another human.
Well, and we've all got that to-do list of all the things that we need to do today. And it's tough to remember that there are opportunities for you to be a human rather than a transactional robot from day to day, and make those contributions.
My favorite leader right now is Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. I think she shows the power of what empathy and compassion is, right? She's highly connected. That's my modern leader. And she's just an exceptional model for compassionate leadership that's effective. The other is one of my favorites is Ernest Shackleton. In the Shackleton Antarctic voyage, that his ship, the Endurance, got locked in sea ice in the early 1900s. And what was profound about reading about the diaries during that time is that he didn't make any big speeches on, oh, we got to get through this, we're going to survive. But he made sure to get to know each person's individual, what they wanted to survive for. Who did they want to get back to see? What holidays did they want to celebrate? He would bring out all the food stores and have these huge banquets. He'd have these huge football games on the sea ice. Anytime it was one of the crew members' holidays that they wanted to celebrate, he would celebrate it. He would go and scrub the decks. He would get down and do the menial labor of people. And he told people to continue doing what you're doing because you're integral to this. And there was a person who survived. So everybody survived, which is very rare. But there was a person in the diary, a crew member, who wrote down, those were the happiest days of my life. Now, if you're a leader and you can make surviving in the Antarctic in sub-zero temperatures for almost 2 years, then those were make a crew member feel like those were the happiest days of their lives. That's the craft of leadership.
You've made a good impact on those folks around you.
Yeah.
Well, Zach, I've reached the end of the list of questions that I get to ask you, and I really appreciated everything you brought to us today. I could probably go on for another hour or so, but we are a little bit strapped for time. So I wanted to pass it over to Amanda to get us some questions from those watching.
Yeah, Zach, thank you. And Jared, thank you for conducting the interview today. Zach, one of the questions we love to ask our speakers is just share with us your first job. how
Yeah.
old you were, what you may have learned. Just a nice place of leveling those of us and learning how far you've come.
I used to work at the Gap. And I used to, when the Gap was like, when malls were a thing, and I used to even have the headset. Hey, give me that leather jacket in the back. But my favorite, you know what my favorite thing was, is I used to volunteer for the overnight shifts to do the stock room. Um, and I just loved learning about the whole inventory process, right? I loved like being able to be out in front and being able to be on the back and to see that whole process and how many people that were invisible that like made everything else happen, made that whole store run. Because I was part of that invisible crew, right, at night. And that was cool. And that I think implanted in me that most of the workers that make society run are invisible, unfortunately. And that's what I think has driven a lot of my research. I also painted houses for a year. I owned a painting franchise and did exterior house painting when I was a
Awesome.
teenager. And I
Wow.
learned that's what I learned that about what I learned that is I learned that 40-foot ladders and beehives don't mix.
Important lesson, yes. Well, Zach, we so appreciate you. Thank you for sharing your afternoon with us. Great insight, really great discussion. Want to invite everyone to join us next month on November 9th when we meet with Kristen Todd. She is the new president and CEO of the Community Foundation here in Northern Colorado. So we hope you'll join us. I did share in chat the registration link to that event. So go ahead, put it on your calendar, register today if you're available. And we do record these sessions and then make them available for alumni on the Leadership Northern Colorado website. So you can always check these out if you've missed others from our past. I do want to just acknowledge again our sponsor, Canvas Credit Union. So thank you for supporting Leadership Northern Colorado and specifically these leadership moment sessions. We sure appreciate that. And we just invite you all to have a great afternoon. Enjoy your day. Zach, thank you again for your time.
Yeah.
And farewell. We'll connect soon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Zach.